10:01 p.m. Marcus Osei did not say goodbye to anyone when he left. He packed one bag, folded his uniform twice the way he always did, placed his daughter's photograph on top, and zipped everything shut before the sun came up. The letter from his supervisor was still on the kitchen table. He had read it 4 times. He did not need to read it again. The message was simple: he was being reassigned to the Pelican, a patrol vessel on the Volta River, effective immediately. No explanation was given. None was needed. He had argued with the wrongman, and now the wrongman had won. The drive to Agermania Wharf took 3 hours. The TRO smelled of onions and engine oil, and the seat beneath Marcus was broken in a way that made it tilt slightly to the left. He did not complain. He sat with his bag between his feet and watched the landscape change from city noise to quiet green, from paved roads to red dust, from buildings to water. He smelled the river before he saw it. The Pelican was worse than he expected. It sat low in the water near a crumbling dock at the edge of a small fishing village, its hull the color of old rust, its railing bent in 2 places, its engine cover secured with a piece of wire instead of the bolt that should have been there. A teenage boy was sitting on the dock eating a mango. He looked up when Marcus arrived. "You the new warden?" the boy said. "Yes," Marcus said. "I am Kofi. I am the mechanic." He said this without any embarrassment, though he looked no older than 16. Marcus looked at him for a moment, then looked at the boat, then looked back. "Good," he said. "We have a lot of work to do." They did. The first week was nothing but repairs. Marcus fixed the engine cover, tightened the railing, and cleaned 13 months of neglect from the cabin floor. Kofi worked quietly beside him, and Marcus learned quickly that the boy was far more skilled with his hands than his age suggested. He had grown up on the water. He knew the sounds an engine made before it gave trouble. He knew which parts could wait and which could not. Marcus began to trust him on the 3rd day, which for Marcus was fast. Every morning, Marcus took the Pelican upstream on its assigned patrol route. This meant fighting the current the entire way out, the engine working harder than it should, the water pushing back as if the river itself objected to the direction. His supervisor had chosen this route deliberately. It was the most difficult stretch to cover, the least trafficked, the one that produced no significant reports and no opportunity for recognition. It was a route designed to make a man feel forgotten. Marcus patrolled it carefully and logged everything he saw. On the 11th night, it rained. Marcus was in the cabin writing his log when he heard footsteps on the dock. He stepped out with his flashlight and found a young woman standing at the edge of the gangway, soaked through, a cloth bag held against her chest like a child would hold a doll. She was not crying. She looked more tired than frightened. She looked like someone who had been carrying something heavy for a very long time. "The last TRO already left," she said. Her voice was steady. "I only need to sit somewhere until morning." Her name was Efua. She was 29. She taught children in a village school 3 kilometers upriver. Marcus gave her his chair under the small shelter at the stern, made her a cup of Milo on the cabin stove, and went back to his log. He did not ask questions. But the rain was long, and the night was quiet, and eventually she began to talk. She talked about the land her husband had sold without telling her. The land her father had given them as a wedding gift. She talked about how she found out not from her husband but from a neighbor who mentioned it the way you mention weather, casually, not knowing it was news. She talked about how she had been trying to decide what to do ever since, and how the deciding had made her so tired she sometimes stood in front of her class and could not remember what she had been teaching. Marcus listened. He did not offer advice. He did not tell her what he would have done. He simply listened the way he listened to the engine, carefully, without interruption, waiting to understand what was actually being said beneath what was being said. By the time the rain stopped, Efua had made her decision. She had not announced it. She had simply talked until she arrived at it, the way water finds its level. She stood up, thanked Marcus, and walked to the road in the early gray light. She told someone what had happened. Word moved the way words do in small places, quietly at first, then everywhere. 2 weeks later, a woman named Mame Serwa arrived at the dock. She was 55, and she was carrying a baby. The baby was not hers. It was her daughter's child, born 6 weeks earlier during a difficult illness that had taken the daughter before the baby was strong enough to know her. Mame Surwa was going to Accra to stay with her brother, but she had no money for the right transport and no idea how to arrange it. She had heard, from someone who had heard from Efua, that there was a man on a boat who was calm and did not make things worse. Marcus spent the evening making calls on the radio, speaking to contacts he had built over 13 years on the water. By morning, he had arranged for a passenger boat the following day that would take Mame Surwa and the baby to Accra at a reduced cost. He fed them both that night, rice and sardines from his own supply, and showed Mame Surwa how to hold the baby while sleeping upright, which is a skill not everyone knows but which matters very much on a boat. When they left, Mame Surwa held his hand for a moment and said nothing. Marcus nodded and went back to work. Kofi watched all of this from a distance, saying nothing. But Marcus noticed that the boy began fixing things without being asked. The generator. A loose board on the dock. The light at the bow that had been flickering since Marcus arrived. After Mame Surwa came a girl named Ajoa. She was 19, and she arrived in the afternoon on a day when the sun was very bright, with one of her hands wrapped in cloth. She sat on the dock and looked at the water and did not say anything for a long time. Marcus sat nearby and did the same. He had learned, by now, that silence on the water was not empty. It was full of things that needed space. Ajoa stayed for 4 days. She slept in the forward cabin, ate what Marcus cooked, and slowly, over those 4 days, began to speak. She spoke in pieces, the way someone speaks when they are not sure yet how much it is safe to say. Marcus never pushed. He only listened. By the 4th morning, she had said enough to feel lighter. She had also told Marcus the name she needed to tell to the right person, and Marcus wrote it down and told her, quietly, who the right person was. She left looking different than she had arrived. Not fixed, people are not machines, and Marcus knew better than to think in those terms. But steadier. The way a boat steadies when the weight inside it is arranged properly. On the 43rd day, a retired nun named Sister Perpetua arrived. She was 67, she had no distress, and she came carrying a tin of excellent biscuits and a 1978 geographic survey she had found in a convent library, which described a crocodile nesting ground somewhere along this stretch of the river. She wanted to see if it still existed. She stayed for a week. Sister Perpetua was the most interesting person Marcus had spoken to in years. She knew the names of water birds he had never heard of. She knew the history of the river going back 300 years. She sat with him on the stern in the evenings and talked about everything and nothing, and Marcus found himself laughing on the 5th evening, which surprised him. He had not laughed in a while. On the last evening before she left, Sister Perpetua looked at him over her cup of tea and said, "You know what they call this boat in the villages?" Marcus said he did not. "They call it the women's boat," she said. He was quiet for a moment. "I did not plan that," he said. "Of course you did not," she said. "The best things are never planned. They simply happen to people who are willing." She gave him the rest of the biscuits and left the next morning. By the 4th month, the arrivals had become a quiet rhythm. Women came the way the river came, steadily, without announcement, following a path that had been shaped by everything that came before. Some came with specific problems. Some came with no problem they could name, only a weight they had been carrying so long they had forgotten it was not part of them. Some stayed one night, some stayed several days. Some said a great deal. Some said almost nothing. There was the woman who arrived singing a hymn under her breath and left singing the same hymn but louder. There was the woman who arrived with 2 friends and sat on the dock all night, and in the morning all 3 of them looked as though they had put something down. There was the woman who said nothing at all during her entire visit, not one word, and when she left, she took Marcus's hand and pressed it once, firmly, and walked away into the morning. Marcus fed all of them. He listened to all of them. He fixed what he could fix and did not pretend to fix what he could not. He also continued his patrol every morning, upstream against the current, logging everything carefully, filing every report on time. In the 5th month, his supervisor sent an inspector. The inspector's name was Ofori. He was a careful, serious man who arrived in a pressed uniform and spent the morning walking slowly through the Pelican, opening doors, checking equipment, reading logs. Marcus walked beside him and answered every question honestly. The boat was in better condition than it had been in years, and Ofori noted this without comment. The logs were thorough and accurate, and Ofori noted this as well. Then Ofori sat down at the cabin table and read the notes about the civilian stops, and he was quiet for a long time. "This is not authorized under your assignment," he said. "No," Marcus agreed. "The River Authority is a patrol service, not a community shelter." "I understand that," Marcus said. Ofori looked at him steadily. "It needs to stop." Marcus said he understood. He did not stop. In the 7th month, his former wife Abina called. It was the first time she had called since she left for Accra with their daughter, Nanaya, 8 months earlier. The call was careful and formal at first, the way their conversations had become near the end, polite in the way that two people are polite when they are trying not to break something that is already cracked. Then she asked, quietly, "Is it true what they say? That you just listen to them?" "Yes," Marcus said. There was a silence on the line. Not an uncomfortable silence. The kind that comes when someone is holding something they are not yet sure how to carry. "I did not know you could do that," she said finally. Marcus thought about this. "I did not know either," he said. "Not until I had nowhere else to be." She did not respond right away. He could hear the sound of Accra in the background, traffic, a television somewhere, Nanaya's voice asking something in another room. Then Abina said she had to go. But she said goodbye in a way she had not said it in a long time. Like she meant it. In the 10th month, the River Authority announced that the Pelican would be decommissioned. The official reason was the age of the vessel and the cost of continued maintenance. Marcus read the notice the same way he had read the original reassignment letter, calmly, without surprise, with the quiet recognition that this too was not an accident. He continued his patrol. What happened next, he did not organize and did not ask for. A journalist named Abina Kai arrived at the dock one afternoon with a notebook and a press card. She had heard about the boat from a source she would not name. She wanted to write about Marcus. He said no. She said she understood and asked if she could check the water quality along the dock, which Marcus knew was not her actual reason for staying, but which he could not technically refuse. She stayed for 3 days. She watched him work. She watched him cook rice and sardines and hand bowls to people without making them feel small for needing them. She watched him sit quietly with a woman at 2 in the morning while the river moved past them in the dark. She watched Kofi replace a fuel filter and then sit beside a crying woman and look out at the water with her, not saying anything, which was exactly the right thing. Abina Kai did not write about Marcus. She wrote about the women. She named no one who did not want to be named. She described, simply, what this place had become, not what it was built to be, but what it had chosen to be, through the slow accumulation of nights and cups of Milo and a men who had learned to stay when staying was all that was needed. The peace was shared quietly at first, then not quietly at all. Women from 3 villages walked to the River Authority office in Kpando. They brought food, a very great deal of food, and they sat down in the waiting area and said they would like to speak to whoever was in charge of the decision about the Pelican. They waited 2 days. Someone came to speak with them. The decommissioning was postponed pending further review. Marcus was on the water when this happened. He found out from Kofi, who heard it from a fisherman, who heard it from his wife. They saved the boat, Kofi said. Marcus was quiet for a moment. No, he said. They saved what the boat became. Kofi thought about this. Then he went back to work. Nanaya came to visit during a school holiday. She was 11 years old and immediately wanted to know everything about the engine. Kofi spent 2 mornings showing her how things worked, and she was a serious student who asked good questions and did not pretend to understand when she did not. Marcus watched her from a distance and felt something ease inside him that had been tight for a very long time. On the 3rd evening, Nanaya sat beside her father on the stern, their feet dangling above the water, the sun going down behind the trees on the far bank. She had been thinking about something. He could tell because she went quiet in the way she did when her thoughts were bigger than her words. Finally she said, "Papa, why do the women come here?" Marcus looked at the river for a while before he answered. The water was brown and slow and steady, carrying everything that had been placed on it, moving always towards somewhere he could not see. "Because the boat does not move away from them," he said. "It stays where it is. And sometimes, when a person is very tired, that is all they need. Something that stays. Nanaya nodded slowly. She understood this. Children often understand more than adults expect, because they have not yet learned to pretend that staying is easy. Marcus received a formal reprimand from the River Authority 2 weeks later for the unauthorized civilian stops. He signed the document without comment and placed it in his file. He turned on the bow light that evening, as he did every evening. And the river moved past him in the dark, steady and quiet, going wherever rivers go. He did not know what would come next. He did not know if the decommissioning would be stopped permanently or only delayed. He did not know if Abina would call again, or if the silence between them would settle back into something final. He did not know if the women would keep coming, or if the road would change and bring them somewhere else. He knew only what he had learned in 14 months on a battered boat on a difficult route, fighting the current every morning without complaint. He knew that the people who needed a place to rest were not asking for a great deal. They were not asking for solutions or speeches or advice. They were asking, in the only way that tired people ask, by arriving, for something simple. A light. A bowl of something warm. A person who would stay. Marcus Osei stayed. And that, it turned out, was enough.